friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Treat Cart add-on Smoothies and Juice, Treat Cart, Get Well Before and Afters, and Butterfly Kisses. I stamped the images I'll be using on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers to match some pattern paper from the brand new Bitsy Blooms 6x6. So I'm going to tear out the sheet that I want to use as my color inspiration and tuck that under my cardstock panel. I also wanted to show you how I created a quick and easy mask so that I could stamp a bandage onto one of the bunny's heads. Just use a simple post-it note, very quick and easy. So I'm going to jump in with the coloring now, and I'm going to do an underlayer of W00 and W1. I want to add some details to these bunnies, but I just wanted them to have a bit of shading underneath that so that the white parts of their bodies will also have a bit of dimension. So I added in the W1 first, blended out with the W00, and left the plain white cardstock to be my highlight. I also colored in their tails with those shades and the centers of the wheels on the treat cart. For the rest of the bunnies, I'm going to bring in some brown tones. I'm going to use E21, E23, and E25, and I'm going to start adding in some little patches and spots with that E25 first. I want to color one of their ears brown, and then the other one will have some spots. I'll also add some patches to the top of their head and their back, and then just some little spots to their arms. And then once I have that laid in with the E25, I'll start to blend that out with the E23, just pulling that darkest color out a little bit and smoothing everything together. And then I will also bring in the E21. I'll fill in the brown ear and just bring that color forward on the head and the back and hindquarters, and just go around the edges of the spots. I'll carefully color around the bandage on the one bunny's head. And then I decided that I wanted one more shade because I really wanted to soften the edge of that brown into the white cardstock. So for that, I'm going to bring in E000 and just use that where the patches kind of end and help that just be a little bit more smooth. I also added that to their feet, and then a touch of the E25 to the top of the banana. Then I'm going to bring in R00, R21, and R22. I'll give my bunnies some rosy cheeks, add a little bit of that to the inside of their ears, and color in their noses. I'll blend out the R22 with the R21, and then I like to finish up with that R00, which just really helps it fade into their fur tone. I'm also going to color the first stripe on the awning of my treat cart to be pink, and I'm going to color the little juice or smoothie that is in the to-go cup to be pink as well. So I started with the R22, blended out with the R21, and filled in with the R00. So there's actually two different shades of pink in that pattern paper. The first combo that I did represented the lighter of the two. Now I'm going to bring in the R24 and add that to my R21 and R22 to go with the darker combo. And I'll do the next awning and also a little apple in that fruit dish. Then I'm going to add in some oranges. I'm going to use YR02, YR04, and YR07. I'll do the next stripe on the awning and then the orange in the fruit bowl. Next up is going to be yellow, and I'll use Y11, Y13, and Y15 for the next stripe in the awning and the banana. I accidentally grabbed the Y13 first, so I just went back and added in my shadows, and then went back to the Y13 to blend out, and then the Y11. And I'm also going to do the straw, so I'm going to do the top part with the Y15 and the bottom part with the Y11 so that it looks a little bit lighter since that part is inside the cup. And I will do the section of the treat cart down in the middle at the base and just blend that toward the center. If you can't tell, I'm doing kind of like a rainbow theme that matches the pattern paper, and I also think it's really cheerful for somebody that is going through something in recovery, which this will be a get well soon card. So I'm going to next switch to green and go with YG01, YG03, and YG05 to match the green leaves and stems on those florals in the pattern paper. The blue is a really pretty bright blue, so I went with B01, B02, and B04, and I am also coloring in that little blueberry. I know that's not like a super realistic blueberry color, but it does match the pattern paper, and I thought it was a fun little extra detail. I'll also use the B01 to add a little bit of shading to the plastic cup, and I also did take that down into the pink of the smoothie to make that look like it's inside. And then I'll also use that same shade with the B00 added in for the blender. You can either color it before or after you add the other shades, and I also used it for the fruit dish. The purple in that pattern paper is a soft periwinkle shade, so I went with BV01, BV02, and BV04, and I will do the last stripe on my awning, the little butterfly, and also the smoothie that is inside the blender. I used BV04 first, blended out with BV02, and then the BV01 was my highlight. Then I'm going to bring in some cool grays for the rest of my treat cart. I'll use C0, C1, and C3. So I'll do the side poles and the top and bottom edge of the bottom section. I used the C3 first for my shadows, then blended out with the C1, and then I'll add the C0 for some highlight. And my marker started to drip on me because it is freshly filled, so I just pulled off the other cap to equalize the pressure in the barrel and continued coloring. And I'll also do the top and base of the blender with those grays. I'm going to darken up the grays to C5 and C7 to do the wheels on my treat cart. And I also use those for the handle, just C7 first, and then blending out with the C5. I'll use the E40 to add a little bit of shading to the bunny's bandage and trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I trimmed down a piece of Bristol with the second largest of the small stitch rounded rectangle stackables, and I'm going to blend on some Distress Oxide inks. I'm going to use the Cloudy stencil and some Broken China Distress Oxide ink for my sky, and I want to keep that fairly soft so that the coloring of my images really stands out. So I'm using light pressure and starting on that stencil and then just working my way up and creating those different cloud formations, turning that stencil as I go and shifting that until I get a different look each time. I'm going to do 3 rows of clouds and then just add a little bit of ink down at the bottom so that last cloud isn't stark white. And then I'll bring in the Slimline Grassy stencil, and I'm going to add some grass using Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink to start, just making sure that's on there straight. And then I'll start on that stencil once again and blend downward. I'm going to fill in that whole bottom, and then I'm going to darken that up with some mowed lawn at the top of the grass. So I'll just carefully add that on, again using light pressure so that it's not too dark, and taking that down about 1/3 of the way, and then I'll come back in with the Twisted Citron and just blend that out. I did want to add a little splatter detail to give this panel some extra interest, so I'm going to take the darker of the 2 greens, which is the mowed lawn and then also the Broken China, press those onto an acrylic block, add a little spritz of water to each of those, and then I'll pick that up with a thin paintbrush and just tap it off the side of the block so I get a nice fine splatter. And then I will go in with the green and do my splatter down at the bottom. And then I will set this panel aside to dry completely. Once it has, I'm going to pop it in my Misty so that I can stamp my sentiment. I'll use VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm going to stamp "Wishing you a smooth recovery." I'm going to stamp that down once more to just make sure it's really bold and legible. And then I will set this panel aside to dry. I am going to pop my card base in my Misty next, and that is made from Ballet Slippers cardstock. I scored and folded that to an A2 standard size card, and I'm stamping on the inside in bubblegum ink. I'm keeping the inside very simple because there are quite a few people who need to sign this card, so I wanted to leave plenty of room for all of that. So I'm going to go back to my Bitsy Blooms 6x6 pad and tear out the matching plaid print that has that same rainbow color palette, which is so gorgeous. And I am going to trim these two pieces down. I'm going to use the large stitch rectangle stackables to cut down the rainbow plaid, and I will glue that to the front of my card base using the glue tube. So I'm just going to line up the corners, make sure that's on there nice and straight, and then smooth that down into place. The floral print I selectively trimmed down using the smaller of the two Stitch Party banners. So I only trimmed down the bottom side, and I'm going to pop that out and add that to my card front. I'm going to put that horizontally across the card. And I left that a little bit long so that I could make sure that I had it exactly the length that I want, and then I can just trim off the excess. So I'm going to line that up just inside the stitching detail on the right side of the card and smooth that down, and then I'll grab my Cutter Bee Teflon coated scissors and trim off that little overhang there so that it's a perfect fit. Then I'll bring in my focal panel. I've added some Scotch 3M foam tape to the back, so I'll just peel off those release papers and pop that up on my card. It's going to go a little bit towards the left. I'm lining that up in the center of that flag banner, and then I can bring in my images. I've trimmed down some small pieces of foam tape to go behind some of these images, including the treat cart. So again, I'm just going to peel off those release papers. I did add a hole punch because I wanted it to be really well supported. And then I'm going to grab one of those bunnies, the one that does not have the bandage. He is going to be the little smoothie seller, and I'm going to add him into the treat cart so that his head is popping out. And I'll add a tiny little dot of glue behind his ears to make sure that he is well attached. And then I will line that up on the card where I want it. Next, I'm going to add the blender, and I'm going to glue that flat to the card, and I'm going to put it up high. It looks a little weird right now because it's kind of floating in space, but I am going to add something below it. I'm going to add that little fruit dish, and so that way the blender just looks like it's a little bit higher up. You can see a bit more of it that way. I did have to trim down the little piece of foam tape because it was overhanging onto the sides of the treat cart, so I wanted everything to be nice and flush. And then I also have the tiny little blueberry that I'm just going to add a dot of glue to because it's going to sit on top of the fruit bowl, which is already popped up. So I'll just add that right at the base of the bowl as if it's kind of falling out, and the bunny's getting ready to add it into his smoothie. Then I'll take the other little bunny that has the bandage, and he's going to be over on the right hand side sipping on his fresh smoothie. So I'll add that little smoothie to his hand. I originally did add foam tape to that, but I realized it was going to be overlapping the treat cart and the bunny's hand, which are both popped up. So I just added some liquid glue to the back of that. I'll also pop up the butterfly over on the right to fill in some of that empty space. And then I felt like I needed a little bit more color down on the grass above that sentiment. There was a little bit too much empty space. So I stamped and colored and die cut the little trio of flowers from Butterfly Kisses using some of the shades that I had used on the awning, and I'm going to pop those down to fill in that little area there over on the left, and I like how that looks so much better. I wanted to add a little bit of glitter, so I used some Stardust Stickles on the smoothie, in the blender, and in the cup, and on the butterfly's wings and the centers of the flowers. And then for even more sparkle, I decided to add some clear sequins and fill in the centers with the stickles as well. So that is going to finish up this card. I'll lift that up so you can see all of the detail and give you another peek at the inside. This card is going to a dear friend of mine who just underwent a pretty serious emergency surgery, so I wish her all the best, and thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, this will also be on the Lawn Fawn blog and YouTube channel today, so you can check it out again over there. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. All of the products I used will be listed and linked in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye!